We will remember this year as one of hard work and perseverance. Moving forward,
Ibrahim Traore sat across the long polished table in Beijing, his eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and quiet determination. The grand hall carried with it the weight of centuries, its red pillars towering with silent pride. The room seemed too large for two men to share alone, yet it was just them now, after the diplomats, aides, and interpreters had withdrawn. Jinping regarded him with that measured calm that few could penetrate. There was no rush in his demeanor, no visible tension, only the poise of a man accustomed to long silences and heavy decisions. Ibrahim leaned forward slightly, his voice low yet firm, almost as though he was speaking to history itself rather than the leader before him. "Mr. President," he began, "I have come with questions that are not about politics, not about trade or weapons, but about something that transcends nations. Tell me, what do you believe about God?" The question fell like a stone into still water. For a moment, she did not move, his gaze steady, unreadable. Few dared to confront him with such words. The air between them thickened with unspoken weight. Ibrahim knew he had crossed into forbidden ground, a territory where ideology, belief, and silence often guarded each other. But he had not come all this way to ask ordinary things. She's lips curved, not quite a smile, but something thoughtful, as though he were listening not to Ibrahim but to a memory rising from far behind him. He let the silence linger, then finally spoke, his Mandarin syllables soft, deliberate, translated only after the pause. "You ask me about God, Captain," he said. "But do you know what it is you are asking? In my country, generations were taught to look not to heaven but to the earth, to the strength of their hands, the unity of their people. And yet, every leader, no matter how strong, faces this question in the silence of night." Ibrahim leaned back, his expression sharpened. He felt she was not dismissing him, but rather preparing to open a door that few had seen. "So you do ask yourself," Ibrahim pressed gently. She's eyes narrowed slightly, as though measuring how much to reveal. "I have walked through temples older than many nations. I have heard the chants of monks that echo the sound of eternity. I have also seen those same temples abandoned, the chants drowned by the march of progress. And yet, when the world falls silent, the question of God does not vanish. It lingers like incense smoke, impossible to catch, impossible to ignore." Ibrahim listened, struck by the imagery. He expected resistance, perhaps a deflection, but not this quiet confession that the most powerful man in the world also wrestled with the divine mystery. "You surprise me," Ibrahim said. "I thought you would reject the question outright." She folded his hands, his gaze fixed on the dark wood of the table. To reject is easy. To confront is harder. Power teaches you many things. One of them is that men may conquer nations, command armies, bend economies, but none have silenced the whisper that comes in solitude. We all wonder, even if we deny it in public. That is the contradiction of leadership. The words settled between them. Ibrahim felt something stir in him, an echo of his own private nights, where even in the fortress of power he sometimes wrestled with silence. "And what do you say to that whisper?" Ibrahim asked, his voice almost trembling with anticipation. She lifted his eyes, steady as stone. "I say that God, if he exists, has hidden himself deliberately. That perhaps his greatest act was not to appear with thunder, but to vanish into mystery. And in that mystery, he leaves us with a burden, to act as though he is watching, even if he is not." The reply stunned Ibrahim. It was not what he expected, neither faith nor denial, but something deeper, unsettling. "Then you believe in responsibility without certainty?" Ibrahim asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes. Perhaps God does not need to be visible to matter. Perhaps his silence is his greatest command, to see if men, without reward or fear of punishment, will still choose what is just." Ibrahim felt the words carve into him. For a long time he said nothing. His own life had been built on action, on visible struggle against injustice, yet here she was suggesting that the invisible test was greater still. "Do you not fear," Ibrahim finally asked, "that if God is silent, men will choose evil instead? She's reply came quickly, almost sharply. They already do. Power reveals that truth every day. But the silence of God forces us to confront ourselves. If he spoke, if he showed himself, men would obey out of fear. That is not virtue, it is slavery. Silence is freedom. Freedom to betray or to transcend. Ibrahim's breath caught. He felt as though the hall itself had grown heavier, the pillars leaning in to listen. Then what of you, Xi Jinping? Ibrahim said softly. When you are alone, when the halls are empty, when the applause fades, do you pray? Xi's eyes flickered, just for a second, with something almost human, almost vulnerable. Sometimes, he said. The word was barely audible, but it struck like thunder. Not in the way others pray. Not with rituals. But I speak to something. To the silence. To the possibility. Because no man, no matter how powerful, can carry the weight alone. The honesty of it left Ibrahim shaken. He had come expecting ideology, perhaps defiance, but instead he had found confession. You have changed something in me, Ibrahim whispered. I thought of you only as a leader of men, bound to power. But now I see that even here, at the highest throne, the mystery of God still haunts. She leaned forward, his voice lower, intense. And you, Captain, why did you ask me this? What answer were you seeking? Ibrahim paused, searching his own heart. I asked because I see the world tearing itself apart. I see nations running after wealth, weapons, pride. I wondered if those who rule still remember that there is something greater than power. I wanted to know if you, of all men, believe in that greater thing. She studied him for a long moment, then said, I do not know if I believe, but I know I fear. Not fear of armies or revolutions, but fear of failing that unseen witness. If God is real, then every act is recorded. If he is not, then every act still defines eternity for those who come after us. Either way, we are accountable. The room seemed to vibrate with the weight of his words. Ibrahim felt as though he had been handed a mirror, one that reflected not just his own face, but the hidden conscience of every leader. Your reply, Ibrahim said slowly, will change how I walk into tomorrow. It will change how I see my own people. For I now understand that the silence of God may not be absence, but test. She nodded, and for the first time, the faintest smile touched his lips. Then perhaps you have received the answer you sought. The conversation did not end there. For hours they spoke, not of politics or treaties, but of destiny, morality, the unseen thread that connects the lives of men to the heavens above. Each word carried the gravity of empires, yet the intimacy of two men stripped of titles. They questioned, challenged, confessed. And when at last they rose, the hall felt different. Not just a chamber of power, but a sanctuary where God himself had been spoken into the silence. When Ibrahim stepped out into the night air of Beijing, he looked up at the vast dark sky. For the first time, the silence did not frighten him. It humbled him. It empowered him. He realized that even the mightiest. The plane hummed softly as it carried Ibrahim Traore back toward the skies of Africa. The city of Beijing had faded beneath the clouds, and now only the vast expanse of night stretched outside the windows. He sat alone, his aides respectfully giving him space. His mind was not on politics, not on the deals signed or the agreements secured, but on the single conversation that still echoed like a drumbeat in his heart. Xi Jinping's voice had not left him. Perhaps his silence is his greatest command. That sentence had embedded itself into his spirit, circling again and again, as though demanding not just reflection but transformation. Ibrahim leaned his head against the seat and closed his eyes. For a brief moment he was no longer the soldier, the leader, the revolutionary. He was a boy again, sitting under the African night sky, listening to his grandmother whisper stories about God. He remembered the way her voice trembled when she spoke of unseen powers, of ancestors, of a creator whose eyes could see all things. Back then, it had felt like comfort. Later, it became mystery. And now, after speaking with she, it had become something else entirely, a weight. The silence of God. Could it really be true that silence was not absence but a test? Could it be that the Creator had hidden himself so that men might prove what was in their hearts when no divine lightning threatened them into obedience? The thought made Ibrahim restless. He stood from his seat and walked slowly to the narrow window of the aircraft door. Stars glittered in the darkness, silent witnesses above. He whispered aloud, "If you are there, hear me. If you are not, then let this whisper still shape me. Because I cannot lead my people without knowing I am heard, even if only by the silence." He stayed there for a long time, unmoving, until one of his aides approached quietly. "Captain, do you need anything?" Ibrahim turned, his face unreadable, and shook his head. "No. Only time." When he landed in Ouagadougou, the air felt heavier than usual. The desert winds carried dust and fire, as if the earth itself was restless. Crowds greeted him, chanting his name, waving flags, raising their fists in salute. To them, he was strength incarnate, the defender of their sovereignty, the man who had defied the powers of the world. Yet inside him was a trembling question. How many of these people cried out in their own nights, waiting for God to answer? And if he never spoke, would they still choose righteousness? That evening, Ibrahim dismissed most of his advisors and asked only for the company of one old friend, a man who had fought beside him in his earliest days of struggle. They sat outside under the bare night sky, the city's hum fading in the distance. "Tell me," Ibrahim asked, "do you believe in God?" His friend, startled, chuckled awkwardly. "Captain, you never asked me that before. I thought you were a man of action, not of sermons." "Answer me anyway," Ibrahim insisted. The man grew quiet. "I believe," he finally said. "But sometimes I think he is too far, too silent." The words pierced Ibrahim, for they were the very words she had spoken in another tongue, on another continent. "And what do you do with that silence?" Ibrahim asked. "I endure," the man replied. "I act as if he sees, even if I cannot hear." Ibrahim stared at the horizon. It was as if the same answer had traveled across cultures, across oceans, across the minds of rulers and soldiers alike. Silence. Yet responsibility. Perhaps the test was universal. The following weeks unfolded in ways that tested this new awareness. In his office, reports flooded in, some of corruption among officials, others of villages starving while resources were hoarded by the greedy. In the past, Ibrahim might have acted swiftly, punishing with iron discipline, determined to force justice through strength. But now he hesitated. What if justice required more than fear? What if the silence of God was not permission for tyranny, but an invitation to choose a higher path? He began to hold longer meetings, listening more, probing deeper. He demanded not only efficiency, but sincerity. When officials tried to excuse their greed, he would stare at them with a weight that made them shift uncomfortably, then ask, "If God is watching, will you speak these words again?" Some laughed nervously. Others fell silent. Yet the question lingered in their hearts long after they left his presence. Slowly, something began to change. Not out of fear of Ibrahim, but out of an uneasy awareness that perhaps an invisible judge truly listened. One night, Ibrahim traveled quietly to a small village without escort, his uniform hidden beneath a simple cloak. He walked among the people, seeing their hunger, hearing their grievances. A child approached him, barefoot, holding a piece of dry bread. She offered it shyly, not knowing who he was. Ibrahim knelt, his chest tight. "Why do you give this to me, little one?" he asked softly. "Because you look tired," she said. He took the bread in his hands, but tears pricked his eyes. He thought of she's words again. Perhaps his silence is his greatest command. Was this child the voice of that silence? Was God hidden in the act of a little girl offering bread to a stranger? That night, under the stars, Ibrahim prayed, not in ritual, not with elaborate words, but with the raw honesty of a man broken by both power and humility. If you are silent, then let your silence teach me. If you are hidden, then let your hiddenness shape me. But if you are real, Then let me not fail this test. Days turned into weeks, and his leadership began to carry a new depth. Those close to him noticed he was calmer in crises, slower to anger, more deliberate in justice. He listened as though unseen ears listened with him. He judged as though unseen eyes judged him also. Rumors spread among the people. The captain has changed. He walks as though he speaks with the invisible. Foreign diplomats noticed too. Some called it superstition, others called it wisdom, but all agreed that his presence carried a weight that could not be explained by politics alone. One evening, as the sun bled red over the horizon, Ibrahim stood before a gathering of his closest officers. He did not speak of weapons, or of enemies, or of strategies. Instead, he asked them a question. If God is silent, what will you do? The men exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. One answered cautiously, "We will do what is right, Captain." "And how will you know what is right?" Ibrahim pressed. "When no voice speaks, no sign appears, no reward is promised?" Silence fell. The question itself seemed to shake them more than any speech of war. Finally, Ibrahim said, "Then this is our test, not only to fight for our land, but to fight for our souls. Even in silence, we must walk as though the heavens watch us. If God is there, he will see. If he is not, then at least our children will." The men bowed their heads. For the first time, they felt their struggle was not only political but eternal. Months later, when Ibrahim walked once more under the open night sky of Burkina Faso, he remembered Beijing. He remembered Xi's calm eyes, the weight of his words, the confession that even emperors pray to silence. And he understood that this was not merely a dialogue between two leaders, it was the echo of humanity itself, from palaces to villages, from soldiers to children. All wondered, all wrestled. Ibrahim looked up at the stars and whispered again, "If you are real, then you have hidden yourself well."